with prices being inflated, GST is not really necessary because 5% of $10 and 5% of $20 is still more money for the $20 item.
Reducing the GST is marginal difference because businesses do not compress their margins just because you change the tax policy. They need competition. So that means today, if you reduce from 9 to 7, prices are not going to come down.
Oh, the housing part, honestly, I'm so confused.
So someone, shorter waiting time, someone to decrease BTO to lower age and then SWP, others who want a completely different calculation of pricing.
One that talks about reducing the
age limit for singles,
correct.
right? From 35 to 28.
PAP's public housing platform. There's a secondary market, there's a lease decay, and there is BTO where you queue up for it. And to keep it affordable, then there's the grants.
PAP's manifesto about ramping up our healthcare system by increasing the number of beds because our waiting time has gone too long, right? Even after COVID. If we increase the number of beds, do we have enough resources?
Welcome back from the break where we had a reset, and we are going to start the big guns, right? All the difficult discussion.
Hey, guests change already.
Yeah, of course. Guests change already because more chim topic must have more chim guests. Important, right? So maybe for our audience that just came in, just want to reiterate that we're doing the live stream every day, from today until the 1st of May, 5 to 7, and it will be broken up into two sets, 5 to 6 and 6 to 7. So the 5 to 6 one usually is more like what happened today, what is interesting and all those stuff. And then the 6 to 7 will be very topical. So the more chim things, right? The difficult things will come at 6 to 7. So if you are a fan of the TFC difficult things, then you can come at 6 to 7. Yeah, I do think that's why a lot of people tune into us. Okay, so once again, I want to reiterate that for your optimal consumption experience, I think YouTube will be your best place. So although we are streaming across the board, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, but yes, YouTube is your best space. So for all of you that don't know, this is our GE Special. I'm your host, Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut, and I'm joined with Adrian.
Hello, everyone.
Quick intro about you.
Author of No More Bosses, co-host for this
Gonna
thing.
slog it out with me for 9 days.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, like to write a lot on LinkedIn.
A lot of political memes.
It's
It's great fun, but we are serious podcast.
Yes.
So cannot just be great fun.
These few days will be serious.
These few days a bit more serious, yes. And we are joined with Amir and Anthony. Everybody knows Anthony lah. So like my favorite co-host, right? That's what you like to say, right? Yeah. The difficult things I always ask him on, right? Investing lah, some of these other bigger things. So welcome back.
Yes,
I hope you've done your homework. There's a lot of manifesto to read.
I'm a bit scared because everybody got phone, got iPad, I got nothing. But
that means
okay.
you have digested. You digested. Yes. And Amir, the other half of the Golden Nuggets podcast.
Yes.
So for our audience that don't know you, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Amir and I'm the co-founder and also a co-host for the Golden Nuggets podcast. And I was also, fun fact, I was also a anesthesia nurse.
Oh.
Yes.
Wow. What has a nurse got to do with Golden Nuggets podcast?
I think we can talk a bit about that when we discuss about the manifesto, because one thing that really caught my eye when I was reading the manifesto is the some of the healthcare plans that some of the parties have.
Oh, wow, bro, you read the brief, man. Yeah, good podcast. You know
This is a study in contrast.
The weave into the main thing is good. Okay, great. So maybe we start off with a high-level overall feel of the different manifesto. To be fair, okay, please don't expect us to read every manifesto.
That's really a lot.
It's really a lot. We're really working overtime, So if let's say you have a specific thing that you've seen in a specific manifesto that you want us to talk about, you can put in the comment section and we will try to expand and expound on them. But do not expect that we know everything in every manifesto. But I think it's in our duty to at least study the big four.
Yeah.
Right. So PAP, WP, PSP, and SDP. Right.
And obviously we'll touch on topics that cuts across more people.
Of course. Maybe for a start, how is the feel, the lay of the land? How does it feel like across the different manifesto?
I think across the different manifesto, pretty much the same kind of topics that is being discussed or being brought upon. Cost of living, like certain small healthcare reforms, and also jobs and wages. I think a few of the manifesto we see some of them actually proposing a certain number for minimum wage. GST is also another thing. So pretty much standard across the board. But yes, some of them still do not discuss about these things also lah.
So most people got the brief lah.
Yes,
what
correct.
what do the people care about?
We all talk about the same things, right?
Yes.
And I think a big one this election really seems to be cost of living and GST and housing. That's all. But I think cards on the table went to be very, very open. I've read the manifestos. I find some of their sometimes the policies feel a bit off to me, right? But to me, I caveat all this with, I tend to give the opposition, I double standards lah, right? I hold a PAP to a higher standard because they are the existing government, they have all the data, they can craft the policies according to that, right? Our opposition parties, they all have their own backgrounds and they all walk the ground, they know all the anecdote, but they don't have the consolidated view, right? Or the bird's eye view, or at least not all of them have all of it. And you don't necessarily get all of it in parliament. So to the extent, I see some policies, I find that, come on lah, this can't be right. But at the end of the day, I think it's okay because they might do something differently once they have all the information and all that. And I think that the manifestos are just a bit of a judge of what they view as important, right? What they view as important to the electorate. And, everybody wants the same thing. I think, to be fair, all the parties in Singapore want the same thing. We want, a bit less economic inequality. At least, we all say we want the same things, right? Want a bit less economic inequality, want a good life for Singaporeans, want people to have access to their passions and the ideas and all of that. Of course, right? We all want that. And I think where we differ is really how we get there and what is important for us in getting there.
So I did a podcast with Sean Low. I think he is running with the PAP at Jalan Besar, GRC. You can check that out because I asked him quite a point blank question. So if today the government's view is we want to give more people to define success in all sorts of ways, right? Broaden the parameters of success, then my question is, so is the state going to come in to then cover the basic needs, right? Because truth of the matter is many people make different career choices or, strategies to make more money so that they can, essentially enjoy a better quality of life. So it's not 2 and 2, there will always be some people that are willing to counter culture, don't care about money and just do whatever they want to do, right? It is what it is. But if this is a national imperative, right? If we as a nation is going to move down this platform where more people can do whatever that they want to do and not be so concerned about cost of living and losing our opportunities for their kids, then what is the state going to do about it, right? So I think that will be an important question for the next decade to come, right? If everybody is moving down this path and across the party manifesto, everyone is moving down this path.
Yeah.
So it's just
the question is, how do you fund it?
Yes. How far do you want to go?
I can ask questions in Parliament too.
Yes. Great. Adrian, what about you?
But I think to your point, it is really hard for the opposition to even put together such manifesto to begin with because you don't even know how much. You're just really a lot of hantam work in progress. But having said that, I think some of it, you really got to give them kudos for putting the
and
effort.
And you write a lot, very long.
A lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, some very big fonts, a lot of pictures, but still a lot of pages.
A lot.
We were saying earlier on, some read like academic journals.
SDP's manifesto looks like an academic journal. Really, everything you throw in, it's quite crazy. Yeah. Probably led by academics. I mean, Paul is quite a big academic. So yeah. Any other things caught your eyes?
But I think overall it's really the few things that the cost of living is one key thing that everyone would be so concerned about. And earlier on, we were talking about CBD crowd, not so concerned about all that. You know how much is my lunch today in CBD? $19. I deliberately eat a bit more because I know I'm going to come here and going to have a late lunch. $19.
What do you eat?
It's food court. I need to explain food court. So
$19 cai peng with a lobster inside.
It's Japanese food,
oh
still
my God.
$19. So I think the cost of living thing is real, which is why the cai peng outside Shenton House, the queue is crazy. It's crazy long because it's the most affordable one. So I think it's really affecting a lot of people left, right, and center. And you mentioned about the 5C, right? You don't chase that anymore.
Yeah.
Thinking about that, last time, even if you don't achieve 5C, you achieve 3C, you live very comfortable already. Now you 5C, maybe you still have to struggle a bit.
It's true. And this is an anecdote. When I say it's true, it's anecdote. Okay, so some of the MOM stats does show certain things. We have covered it across the board. You can go and take a look. Essentially, what I'm just trying to tell you is, when you feel the pain, right, you're not wrong. You're not weird. It's really quite painful.
Trust your instinct.
Yeah, your instinct for not always, but for this scenario, it is true, right? You are feeling the pain objectively from the stats, and I think from a lot of the casual conversation. I mean, a lot of senior public servants I talk to, they're like, oh yeah, we've been talking about cost of living. I was like, huh? Even you're talking about cost of living? You know, if you're talking about cost of living, you know how many other people will really need to talk about it. In that sense, I think all the party got the brief correct. You know, I mean, other than a few which we will not discuss because you know they are not in the running, I'm sure. So that is great lah. Okay, so maybe for a start, let's lay down, right? Cost of living, you know, what are some of the big things that different parties are proposing, you know, and get a sense of what caught your eyes.
So for cost of living, I think one of the biggest and common thing that every party is talking about is really about the GST. Because I think like we are moving to a higher, I think right now it's at 9% or 10%.
Yeah, 9%.
Right? 9%, right? I see some parties actually mention about bringing it back down to 5%. I think that was SDP. And then I think it was PSP or Workers' Party that mentions about maintaining it at 7-8%, and then we need to go through like 3 years of negative, is it GDP? Before we actually review what is the should we hike up the GST rates. Okay. I think that is also quite interesting to me because everything is inflated, right? All prices are inflated, right? So with prices being inflated, generally GST is not really necessary because 5% of $10 and 5% of $20 is still more money for the $20 item.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so
right?
that's the thought process.
Yeah.
Okay.
So to me, like I think it makes sense to not like really hike up our GST too much at the moment, especially when, like just now you mentioned, everybody talk about cost of living.
To be clear, I think it was PSP that suggested to bring it back down to 7%. WP did not talk about adjusting the rate. They talked about exploring alternative revenue. Then I think, I'm not sure what SDP said, but if you say SDP said bring down to 5%,
yes.
okay, that's even more drastic. But everybody is along the vein.
Are we going back to 2000s?
Yeah. But it's actually quite a chatter online.
Yeah,
people are talking about this reduction of GST. You know, I have a view, right? But I don't want to say my view first.
Why not? Why not?
Yeah. Any.
So, and I think one gloss of that, I think it was SDP actually said GST, yes, but we exempt key goods from it.
Essential
goods, right? So your oil, your rice, all of that, you know, that should not be subject to GST.
I also had a whole spiel about this, but yes, please.
You also had, right?
You say
you
first.
have a lot of shoes.
Hey, good quality one, good quality one. Yes.
No, and I think that's where a lot of the, and I mean, this is honestly a bit of a political thing, right? In the sense that what seems to happen on the ground is not that 1% GST increase, is people going up 50 cents, $1, you know, whether supply chain, whether because GST coming up, whether because they have not increased price for the last 10 years, whatever. But all of this has come at once, right? Your GST increase, your people took opportunity to increase the price generally, and that, to your point, adds to revenue collection as well. So, and then it becomes, well, we all knew we were struggling a little bit over the past 2 years, right? So was this really necessary? Did we really have that? And I think that has become a bit of the political stick to hit people with. Of course, the PAP goes, oh, it's okay, right? Don't worry, because I will give you a voucher. I will offset it for you, right? And so a GST, which is essentially a regressive tax, right? Because it hits the poorest the hardest, becomes neutral from those people's perspective, but then it hits the people who earn more, right? And then you make them worse off. They don't say that, but yes, you make them worse off.
The middle class always kena these things. Yeah.
You're not rich enough to actually be rich.
You're not poor enough to get supported, so you're stuck in the middle, and this is the voting block.
This is the voting block we are aware of. I think the PAP plays to a very different tune for a very different block.
Of course.
So, you know, with this GST thing, I mean, I don't think any of them actually has it right. I don't think we can look at it in isolation, right? So from the government, and not really a government supporter, but from a government's perspective, this is all revenue increases. And this is all to fund, you know, the bigger social safety nets that we want, to fund Skills Future, all the retraining programs. Like all this revenue comes in and goes out, right? We have run a relatively balanced budgets over the past few years. So more revenue. Some
will even argue that it's been surplus. It's just that the some parts of the budgets have been stacked into different bigger policy spend, right? Which is essentially eventually it has to go out also lah. So so balanced budget, I don't dispute that. Just want to add the color.
Yeah. So anything that I take in anyway, I will give it back out to you if that's the government policy. And then from that perspective, that's okay. Because if you take any of these other policies, right, you reduce revenue coming in, what goes out has to reduce. Assuming we all want to run balanced budgets, right? Every single party wants to run a balanced budget. Something going out has to reduce. What are we reducing? Right? And maybe that's something that, people don't really cover in their manifestos. And that's something that, there's a trade-off that maybe needs to be expounded on a bit more.
Yeah. No, actually, for the trade-off point of view, right, I just want to add this because a few people recently asked me about this thing, right? And I want to see whether we can push this idea that we should separate income and expense. Okay, because now the easy trope is, then what you want to sacrifice, what you don't want to spend, right? So that's the easy trope, right? Or the usual rebuttal will be like, then how are you going to fund it? I hate that trope, right? Because it's all about prioritizing, right? At the end, if as a nation, we believe that these things are our priority, we will find money for it. And we have shown time and time again that this is what we can do, right? Because we have money for sure, right? So this is the part where I hope that we can push the narrative to separate the income and expenses. Don't see it as a linear process.
I agree with you, but I think the way that the government is set up and our constitution is set up is that balanced budgets have to be there, right? So you can run a deficit for a bit, you can get a president's assent to run a deficit for emergency situations, but at the end of the day, I think it is in our constitution, if I remember law school correctly, that within your term, you have to have balanced it. So in the Singapore context, it's very difficult to delink.
I'm not saying structurally you delink it, right? So balanced budget is fine, okay? But if the trope is always that, okay, if some party says, we want to do this, then the question is how you're going to pay for it, right? Then there will never be a discussion on like the importance of this policy, because truth of the matter is like medical stuff, right? Sometimes you don't cure the thing now, it becomes a bigger problem down the road. Right. So in policy, in problem solving, there's always the element where it compounds. The problem compounds and become a bigger problem downstream. So when I say that we should try to open this up and separate it, I'm not saying we should not run balanced budget or we should just always take deficits, but it's the thought process of okay, this side is to collect money one. So how do we collect this money? Okay. And then the other side is spend. So what is our spending priority? What do we want to do? Right. And I want that to be delinked from a thought process standpoint so that we can have a more rigorous discussion, right? And I don't want anybody to have an easy way as how to spend, how to pay for it. I really hate that because some of the policies, they potentially can address problems that could be even bigger if you don't do anything now, right? Like inequality, like all these things, they compound over time, right? So I think that's where I am discussing this. Okay, but we welcome your discussion. So if you have any other things, please feel free to share with us. Yeah, any other things before I share my spiel about GST? This is the big one. Confirm go viral.
I honestly, knowing the position of some of these parties, you kind of expect what they'll be saying. Yeah, and how left or how right they'll be leaning. So it already give you a sense lah. But some of the key things that really point out. Well, firstly, PAP manifesto very easy to read lah.
Yeah. Very short.
It's a light read.
You don't have to read their words. You see their conduct.
Yeah.
Font size very big.
Yeah.
But one thing that really stood out to me in the manifesto, right? We will give you voucher as long as you need war. So I think it's also a signal that this voucher thing may be here to stay.
Where's my voucher?
No, GSTV has been touted as a permanent thing already, right? A permanent mechanism, like GST voucher. So it wasn't discussed this round, but it's a permanent mechanism. So it's always gonna be there, lah. Or that's what the party says, because it's not written into constitution, right? So it can always change whenever there's a desire to make some change.
So if you change a party, will there still be a voucher?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the part, right? You're not very sure. Okay, so that's what you want to say for GST. I'm gonna start.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Pent up very long already.
I'm gonna start. I pent up very long already. So this GST thing, whatever the debate prior to this is already passed, right? It has already happened. Right, so today it is 9%, and the people have already sucked up the problem of this new reality in terms of price equilibrium. Right, so like I remember 5 years ago when I did TFC, right, my reference point for a middle class lunch in the afternoon is $4, right? But $4, $5, right? That's now it's like $8, right? And it's crazy, yeah. So the reference price have changed, all the models have changed, and my thought process is now, okay, people are in pain for sure. Reducing the GST, is it gonna, move any difference? I will argue is marginal. Okay, my point of view is marginal difference because businesses do not compress their margins just because you change the tax policy. Okay, they need competition to like twist their turn and their arm, then they will, bring the prices down. Or at least that's my experience with businesses. Unless you have a different point of view.
I think that's right. Once it goes up, it never comes down. Supply chain not disrupted, price still high.
Exactly. So all the problem about supply chain, whatever, fuel costs, go up, right? Then it will never come down when the fuel price come down. Only when competition comes in, cheaper alternative, then they will start to compete on price and then margins come down, right? So that essentially that is a long dated strategy. It will not come down in a short span anyway. Okay, so that means today, if you reduce from 9 to 7, prices are not going to come down, in any tangible manner. So from my point of view is now we are already in this position. Why not take the money and then redirect it back to the people, right? So I actually agree with the part of like vouchers and all that. But what I want to push is, can we then move beyond this concept of vouchers, right, and start to explore? I think Keng Soon was talking about the citizens' dividend, right? So this is a part that I think could be potentially discussed, because it's about how you frame it as a narrative, how you term the things, right? Makes a world of difference. And also structurally how you're going to do this, because I think in Hong Kong they do kick back on the additional taxes that they received, right, to the people, right? So there is a yearly dividend, and this is varied one, depends on whatever is extra. So if you ask me, if the whole idea of re-looking at this GST thing is to manage costs, then pressing from 9 to 7 is not going to change anything. In fact, it will make it harder for the government to do anything, right? Because now you lose 2% on the overall, where GST is one of the biggest, if not the biggest tax revenue that comes in, right? So I will argue against that. Okay, this is my point of view, but I want to see a different view on redistribution, right? Which at this point in time, I don't really see it in such a direct cash handout thought process. Is or like a dividend process. Okay, it's usually used as expanded targeted spending and other vertical of whether is it healthcare, all these other things that people are talking about. It's not so like, extra, we give back to you. No, okay, so it's not there yet. So this is my thoughts. To address the part about like exempting necessities, right? Because I think, was it WP or was it SDP or was it PSP? One of the party said that, I think it's PSP, if I never remember wrongly. So 2 years ago, when they were discussing race in GST, I'm not, just to be clear, I'm not trying to misrepresent the party. So please go and read up what do they say exactly. I think it's PSP.
Yes.
Okay, right. Exempt necessities from GST. 2 years ago, when they were discussing this GST, I went on the Yalabat podcast to talk about this, right? And I said, I think it will create unnecessary market manipulation, for this. Because the question now is, okay, so let's say we exempt bread, okay? Then what constitutes bread? Is a brioche a bread? Is a croissant a bread? Right? If we exempt rice, biryani rice, basmati, is it rice? Right? Glutinous rice considered rice not? Japanese pearl rice considered rice not? Right? So it actually creates a lot of mechanics in the market that distorts things. And these are already the very vanilla neutral things, So if let's say we go one step deeper to define bread as 70% wheat, okay, we define bread 70% wheat. Then what is stopping the merchants, right, from adjusting their formula to pump all the weird things inside that and then bring their bread to 70% and to exempt from GST, right? So there are a lot of unwanted market mechanics that can come in that I actually think will create more problem for the people. Right? Because I know at least from my thought process, or from what I hear, government today, which is the PAP government, looks at it from an administrative cost standpoint. Say it's very hard to administer exemptions. While I do not disagree, I find the bigger problem is when merchants start to go through all this weird arbitraging and do all the weird things to the product. Right, and in fact, it may affect our long-term health as a country. So that is my view of things. So exempting, actually, I don't support also.
And the sad truth is, merchants will do it.
They will do it. They have a whole team. Sorry, we are all SME people, but it's true. It's true. People do it all the time. And once you draw a line, like the cancer drug list, right? A line is drawn. Once the line is drawn, all the prices get adjusted to meet within the parameters so that they can get the government funding, right? If not, then they are priced out. The public facility will not use that, right? So once a line is drawn, merchants do this all the time.
That's when the game starts.
Yeah, that's when the game starts, right? Then the lawyer will come in and look at this, so all that, right? Can do this or that. I really do not want that type of mechanics in our day-to-day things. Yeah, our necessities, like let's just keep it where it is, right? That's my point of view. And
having said that, I think this GST thing, right, it's not talking to people's head. It's talking to their heart.
It's true. It's true. That's why we are here to talk to people's head, right? So we want to be able to have that quality debate, right? And not just like, oh, reduce GST and then shout. For me, it's like, okay, reduce GST for what? Right? For what? Right? We are already here. If we didn't want to do it, we shouldn't have done it before.
True.
Right? So that is my point of view. And I welcome all debates, on this matter. Yes. Thank you for my 5-minute speech.
You want to write manifesto?
Yes, yeah, can. No, it's okay. Yeah. Any other things that stood out from a cost of living standpoint for you guys?
I want to talk about housing, but I think that's separate.
Housing, okay.
Yeah. Housing is big. Okay, before we go there, any other things cost of living?
I think housing is the next thing that we should talk about because it is really a big thing. I think all parties also cover about this.
Yes. Very thick. All parties.
The housing part, honestly, I'm so confused.
Confusing also because some talk about the land price, land cost, and then to me it's
shorter
like,
waiting time flat. Huh?
Yeah.
And then you have to read more.
To be fair, I think for the housing debate, they will require even more people in the expert field. So we will probably do another one with more experts on set. I have been having a little bit of a problem getting experts from the big university. Just saying. From the big university, there has been some discussion about, oh, sorry, my boss say cannot come, blah, 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 blah. So I welcome all the other universities, to send your professors on one of the best finance show, right? So yeah, maybe we roll on housing. Any thoughts on housing?
I think that there's even the opposition parties have different views. And,
actually,
and
housing is the most different view across the board, I would say. But yes, you go first. Yeah.
So someone, shorter waiting time, someone to decrease BTO to lower age, and then SWP. There's others who want a completely different calculation of pricing.
Totally, yeah.
Right? So
I think there was one that talks about reducing the single what's it called?
The age limit for singles,
correct.
right? From 35 to 28.
Yeah,
I think
so 28,
I support. That one I support. Personal, I support.
That one I'm waiting for a spiel.
I have a bigger spiel on this whole thing, but yes.
And I disagree with you. But then, I think the very technical one of, we don't include, we should sell everything at cost, right? We don't include land costs because that land is a government's anyway, so who cares? And I think, was it PSP said, this might be Red Dot actually, said SIRS for everybody. 99 years doesn't count. Government will buy it back, don't worry. Right? And then that provides stability.
That's a market in a crazy frenzy. But yes.
So I think that there's a lot of very different views, right? But maybe from our perspective. And these are all on HDB, right? Nobody really cares about private or landed.
Clearly, no one cares. It's like whatever price, whatever lah. Doesn't matter.
That is also a bit of, I think it's a bit misguided because the market moves together.
Yeah,
right? And there's time lag,
there's
not perfect correlation.
Because the valuer actually takes the land price, from there and factor into pricing. So you cannot just forget that part. Yes.
Yeah, they take the private next door that's very expensive, say, there's a land price now.
Yeah.
Right? I got a bid for that. That is a market price.
Yeah.
And then you put that into your HDB pricing and then you discount it back.
Yeah.
And then say,
that's the PAP platform.
Yes.
Right?
That's how PAP does it now.
That's how PAP does it now.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then again, like with GST, and you kind of see this trend, it's too expensive. It goes above a certain ratio of your median income because we still want things to be affordable. Don't worry, grants, right? And your grants are then tied to carrots about what they want, what they see as good behavior. You must be married. This one.
Have kids.
Stay near parents.
Stay near parents. Right.
Like,
so then these are all the
it's
carrots.
like a dream of a good family,
Which I am, but I'm still struggling. Anyway.
Standard Channel 8.
Standard Channel 8 sitcom drama, right? Last time. I don't know. Is it the same with Surya, all those?
I think it's
but sometimes
the same,
okay. Yeah, go.
I think that's the PAP's position. And we have seen that quite clearly. To be honest, I don't quite know what to make of the others, right? I think the lowering of the single thing, you'll disagree with me, but I think 35-28, honestly, it doesn't matter. it's already oversubscribed, right? You might not get it. You're just increasing competition without increasing supply, right? And at the end of the day, this is public housing. The government should be entitled to write policy in a way that drives the outcomes it wants, right? So it wants to increase, it wants people to start families young. No, do they say that? No, they don't say that. They want people to start families, they want people to get married, go down that very stable path so you'll never leave Singapore. Then that's why they reserve BTO more for married couples, right? So, and the land price thing, I don't know. I think we'll have this conversation on Sunday with one of the independent candidates who has a completely different view of HDB, which I think is relatively interesting, which is why we are talking to him. But that's the reality, right? If we are working with this framework of HDB is public housing, but there's asset progression, there's a free market, that's really all you can do. Right? You can't reduce land price, because once you take away land price, then you create this whole new class of HDBs. Then what happens to the old ones? What happens to new ones? It's too messy. And go back to administrative costs. It's too messy. Even now with the Prime Plus models, it's already getting a bit messy about how you actually value HDBs. So you can't...
I actually think that mess is what is desired to try to manage the pricing situation at this point in time.
They are trying to draw that line of, I don't want to retrospectively take away your value. Right? Because you all need to vote for me. Cynically, you all need to vote for me. But I don't, you're bought under, but I mean, it's fair, right? You're bought under a certain assumption. I cannot change that framework. It's unfair of me to change that framework. But I change that framework for people going forward, right? Which is why you have your new things. And actually, think about it, if you can do that, why can't you do that for new HDBs going forward, right? You can have a whole new set of HDBs that I built, but can only be resold back to HDB. Right? Or they can only be properly leased, right? In a leasehold.
That is the SDB plan.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
yes. So and I think that makes sense.
Okay,
right?
okay. Interesting. Hey, welcome to the Financial Coconut Podcast Network. I'm your host, Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut. And if you're loving what we're creating here, like, share, subscribe, share with your loved ones, comment in the comment section below. And yeah, we'll see you for great content on Chills with TFC. Maybe I share a overall spiel of how I saw the different policies, right? So I've looked through them and I was trying to figure out what's going on, right? So we must always take reference when we compare, right? So we take reference to the current system, which is the PAP system, okay? Which there is a few things, right? There's an open secondary market that you can exit, right? There is a BTO system that is actually not that old. It's about, I think, 20 years, right? So there's a BTO system where you can queue up and wait for your flat, then you enter the market, right? And then there's a lease decay situation where they have openly pledged. In fact, Prime Minister Lawrence was the one that came out to burst the bubble of asset appreciation, right? So he was the one that said at the end of 99 years, it will go to zero.
Yeah, he said that the property agents have not got the memo.
Yeah. At the end of 99 years, I think it will go to zero. And I think the MND showed it through some of the older estates like Geylang. Yeah, they actually took it back and they showed it, right, to tell you that it's gonna be like that, right? So there's that. So these are the three major characteristics of the PAP's public housing platform, right? There's a secondary market, there's the lease decay, and there is the BTO where you queue up for it. Okay, so these are the three mechanics. And to keep it affordable, then there's the grants, right? To try to keep it affordable and achieve whatever goals that they need to. Okay, so actually, when I read through all the others, right, the least of my concern is the 35 to 28 one. I'm not very concerned about that.
That's quite irrelevant.
Yeah, because it's not a big move. And to be fair, in the HDB documentary that MND did, right, Minister Desmond Lee did say that, one of the ways is to welcome singles into the BTO system, right? So he did say that. Of course, he never say exactly, so we welcome you to talk, so when will that happen? What are you going to do? But that is one thing. So we take that PAP system as the point of reference and look at the others, right? So the Workers' Party actually leaves it mostly untouched. Okay, the one thing that they really adjust in significant ways is to sell you 70 years instead of 99 years, right? So instead of 99 years, you can buy it at 70, which means you put out less capital up front. You can take the so-called or the expected excess capital to then roll in the financial markets or in let CPF do its work harder and all that things, right? So that is the baseline difference between WP and PAP. Okay, there is one other difference, which is the part where they do buybacks, right? So the buyer of last resort. Okay, so the difference with the PAP at this point in time is they have this very ambiguous plan called VERSE.
Yes.
Nobody has a clue what does VERSE stands for, right? People just think of it as a lousier SERS. Right, that's the threat commonly on the street, right? And SERS essentially is when the government kind of tell you, oh, we want to take back this thing to redevelop, and we will pay you a new place and then some premium on the.
It's on block for HDB.
Yeah, it's on block for HDB, right? The VERSE situation is a bit ambiguous at this point in time, where it is voluntary. 70% or something people got to vote for, and then you are not getting as much back, right? So this part is a headache. I don't know how they're going to run this, because you look at all the en bloc things, right, with Golden Mile. Golden Mile went through en bloc, 3 rounds, right? Because the residents there were very happy staying there, and they want a premium to exit the place. And I would say that would be pretty much the same for a big bunch of the people that stay in the HDB, especially in the older estates. Why would they want to change?
No, but I think that the difference between that and, let's say, en bloc is that when HDB compulsory acquires you back, they give you another one. Right? So you don't only get the cash, you get a replacement new property.
Yeah.
Right? And that's to kind of inconvenience you.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why it's like at least top up.
Exactly. But now the VERSE is question mark.
Yeah.
Right? You're not sure that's...
No, but okay, so I have a very cynical view of the VERSE where it's just kicking the can down the road. We don't know what we're going to do. We cannot say everything will be gone. We cannot say there's only SERS plus lease buyback scheme. We need to create a middle ground that nobody really knows.
So we welcome HDB to come on and talk about VERSE.
If you have any concrete plans,
if you have any concrete plans, please talk to us, because it's been going on for 5 years, right? Since the last election until now, we don't know what is VERSE. And I am very sure the HDB friends are doing all sorts of modeling and all those things. You know, they haven't concluded on their thought processes. If not, it would be so convenient to just come out and tell you this is the plan. Okay, and I will argue that it is because it's going to get very hard to get buy-in from the people. 70% plus no premium, right? And no replacement. So it's very hard, right? So that's the part that WP differs, where WP will say that, okay, never mind, you sell to me, right? Which is HDB, right? You sell to me and that's it. So you don't need to get all your neighbors to sell.
Yeah.
Right. And then WP, if they run the public housing, they will then take it and try to like lease out to other things.
What's the difference between that, like the lease buyback scheme? What's the difference between that and like the lease buyback scheme?
Lease buyback scheme buys the last 30 years,
but
right?
That's kind of selling your HDB, right? Because you're selling your right to live in that place for the last few years of your life.
It's more scoped in that sense, right? So essentially now the WP platforms allow you to sell back to HDB, and then in order, for me, this is my view, WP also can come in and say a different thing. My view is that in order to look like they have a plan and prudent, they say that they will take the flats that are sold back to HDB to then release to a new bunch of people. So as more like a leasing scheme,
or you rent it out,
or rent it out. So essentially HDB takes the stock and then figure out what to do with it. As compared to now, you must get all your neighbors to agree, okay, I cannot even say now because it's ambiguous, right? So the mystical VERSE scheme, requires you to convince a big part of your neighbors to all sell together. That's the difference, right, between WP and PAP, okay? And then when PSP comes in, right, the bigger difference is they want to remove land price from the first round of sale. Right, so from the BTO, they don't want you to sell, but they also keep the secondary market mechanics. The only difference, the only difference is you don't need to pay the land price at the start. But if you want to exit into the open market, you now have to top up and pay the excess of the land price in the open market. Okay, so this is their major difference. Okay, then the SDP goes one step further to have a closed loop, non-open market housing policy, where now the difference is instead of allowing you to exit into a secondary market like what the PSP want, it allows the flats that are already circulating to enter the closed loop, okay, and the government will pay you back the premium that you paid for in the beginning, right? So this is across the board all their plans, okay? So this, at least this is based on how I read the whole thing lah. As to how will it impact asset valuation, retirement adequacy? I mean, we did some coverage here and there, and we welcome relevant experts to come in and expound on that. But that is my read on the overall housing plan that the different party has. Yeah.
which is honestly very complicated.
Yes,
if you look at
it
it.
is.
If you think about it, with the kind of number of nomination right now, I'm not exactly sure how concrete all these plans would be. And a lot of them, like you said, is really appealing to your heart and not really your head. So how much of the impact would actually have, I'm also quite unsure.
Fair.
But I think it's about ideas, right? It's about
now it's about ideas.
It's about the
ideas.
competition of ideas.
Yes.
Do we really need this current framework? Can we improve it? Can we and it goes back to this core idea of what is the HDB?
Yeah.
Is it purely public housing, give you a roof over your head, give you roots in Singapore so you feel like you have something to defend and don't just run away? What is HDB and what do we think HDB should be?
This is the part where I think we can bring into question a renter's scheme, right? Because there used to be a part, I would argue used to lah. Of course, I know you will not be sure until it happens. There used to be a question of whether people will defend the land, but you will not know until it actually happens, right?
Yes.
So nobody will know. But I think we can safely say we have already moved on very far from when we were, pre-independence in 1965, right? Now a lot of people are very vested in protecting the land. Right, this is my view lah. Of course, like I said, nobody will know until it happens. So if we remove that defense mechanism, which comes in from an owner experience, if you own it, you will defend it. Right, there's a higher propensity to do it. I mean, there will be people that run away lah, I'm sure. But if you own it, the higher propensity to defend it. If we can be convinced ourselves that you and I, amongst our friends, we will defend the land when there's a need to, can we then start to explore a proper renters scheme, right? That is not like cacat housing, like what a fun. Sorry. Don't know what they do. It's not the housing thing. Is like it's a bit weird lah. So that is the part where I think the PSP's millennial housing scheme is a bit interesting, right? And it has been done in Taiwan. I know people that have done it. Essentially, it's like running a university dorm in the city center lah, right? So you want to join lah, okay, you must get CCA points you contribute something. We give you a diminished rent, so that, during this period of time, you can focus on building up your career and you can avoid creating enclaves. So, of course, the PAP tries to avoid creating enclaves by building HDB flats in the heart of the city, right? But it tends to very quickly become an enclave anyway. Once it MOP and exits into the secondary market, all of them are $1 million flats.
Yes.
It makes it, okay, not all, but there's a lot, and it then creates an enclave anyway, and there's a lottery effect that I don't think they planned for, but it has happened, right? So at some point, if you want to avoid enclave, then a proper renters scheme could be a way forward. And you see a lot of co-living spaces popping up, and people pay a few $1,000s a month for those. It's very nice, those places.
Honestly, I think for the voters, they don't care about enclave.
Yeah.
They just want to have an affordable place, decent place that they can live. So this millennial scheme actually is pretty
it's
spot
interesting. I really think it's interesting. Whether the PSP gets more MPs in the Parliament doesn't matter to me, but I hope whoever that governs picks up something like that and really considers this idea that, there are certain pockets of the city centre that we can allocate for professionals that are cracking it out, in the city centre, that don't need to go back to Punggol, Punggol is a nice place. Okay. Or like Tampines. But it's far. It's very far, right? So like those places are great for like families, all that. But when you don't have a family, you're still young, you just graduate, 25, entering the workforce.
You want to work till midnight every day.
You want to chiong at the law firm, right? Work in finance, you want to do accounting, all the people that, it's 6 p.m. you see go back down from the MRTs, accountants, confirm going back to audit, right? So you want to do that corporate grind and manage your life in a decent quality and not slog it out at such a level, then we should really explore a quality, renter scheme, in the heart of the city. Right, so that is an extended discussion.
And let's move over to healthcare.
Healthcare is a big thing.
Here.
Yes.
I think the thing that really stands out to me the most was PSP's one, where they mentioned about nationalized insurance premium, where, because right now we have MediShield, CareShield, and also I think there's one more. Is Medifund, Medisave or something? I can't remember.
Medifund, Medisave, yes.
Yeah. So there's 3 things, right? And then with your own insurance, that is basically your entire bill, right? But having one channel to actually just settle the medical bill, I think that makes a lot of sense. Because to me, like, the most confusing thing is really looking at your medical bill. right? And if let's say we have one standard perhaps premium that we are paying every month, whether it's to the government or whether it's to insurance companies, I think that makes the most sense generally for almost everyone. Because another thing is a lot of people or a lot of insurance agents, they need to really go through the grind to really explain to a lot of people how important it is our healthcare insurance are, right?
Which I think they don't. Anyway, that's a different discussion.
It's a terrible product commission-wise.
But we don't want to talk about that.
Okay.
But ultimately, like if this is something mandatory where everybody have like a part of our salary really goes into this every month, and then it covers our entire medical bill, I think that makes the most sense.
Okay, so I will agree with that in my point of view. I think the national run schemes are probably going to be the most cost effective in the long run, right? The only thing that I think our people need to then be comfortable with is some exclusions, right? Because you cannot have all the care in the world if you run a national scheme, which I think actually a lot of people are okay with it, right? Then if you want additional, you tampa lah.
Yes,
you add on your own, right? And at least that's my sense. The ministry is moving towards that already, right? You're seeing it come together with MediShield Life, which did not cover. It covers existing condition. In the past, they don't, right? And that is like one step into a national, insurance scheme. Essentially, it already is a national insurance scheme. It's just like, can we blow it up? Can we do more for the people and then negotiate on behalf of the people? Because collective bargaining is the rules of the game, right?
Yeah.
And risk pooling is the baseline of insurance. And we did an episode about this, it's gonna come out soon. That I think Alex from the Singapore Actuary Society, he came on the show to talk about this. In Singapore, for every dollar that you pay to the insurance company, 12 cents go to your agent on your agency. So the sales channel takes about 12%. Okay, the medical companies take about 78%. So the 78% goes into your actual care lah, whether is it in the private public space.
That's very high.
Your actual care. Okay. Obamacare is at 85%. Okay. So, and the insurance company will cost the remaining and they make a margin of maybe about 2 to 3%. And that is for the integrated shield plan. And it accounts for the one big guy that's making a lot of money, which I will not say who, and the rest don't make as much money. So actually, in actual fact, a lot of them are bleeding, in the integrated shield plan category. So the question then is, so how much, as a state, do we want to intervene and protect? And I would say, everybody wants it in that one direction. And I truly do not think that the voters of today want it to be in the other direction, right? And I think the government is finding more comfort lah. Right. Although it is PSP that brought it up, I think SDP has an even stronger one, from a long time ago. What did they write about?
They basically because Paul Tambaya is there, and he has been arguing on many different podcasts.
Many years,
we should go back to the old system.
Yeah. What's the old system?
Old system basically is just
do you live through the old system?
Well, unfortunately,
actually never.
I age very well.
Yes,
Basically, according to him, the old system, which I did not live through, was everyone pay just the same token amount, a very small amount. Everything else would be covered. And that was one of the key reasons why he actually came into the whole politics to try to stand for it. Have you gone through the manifesto on that part? SDP healthcare.
I think I glimpsed through, but I did not
like
really...
I said, it's very hard. SDP manifesto is very hard to read.
Especially the healthcare
one. Yes, very hard to read. Yes.
But it basically, correct me if I'm wrong, it's basically telling us that they want one main fund or one main insurer to be heading this entire thing, right?
It's true. True. So actually, this mechanism is still being practiced in Malaysia. Okay, so the Malaysians have like essentially macam like free healthcare lah.
That's why they pay RM1.
Yeah. And then everything will be like pretty much sorted, right? So that is what is working in Malaysia. Okay, so
but having said that, you don't hear a lot of people praise.
Yes. So the lived experience of the Malaysian healthcare is that there's not enough beds, not enough people, not in everything like not enough, So that is the lived experience of the Malaysian healthcare. And what I want to caution is that I want to caution when people then use that as an argument against national health insurance schemes, or even going back to something like a state-run healthcare system, right? Because truth of the matter is Singapore did make a lot of economic progress over the course, of the past decade. So we have really led the way in terms of what we made, right? So which also means, by extension, if we want to fund a public system properly, we can look at our education system. It's very well funded because we believe in it, we want it, we can run it properly. I was just talking to some of these senior bureaucrats, right? And I was telling them, yeah, very clear one. If we want it, we'll run it properly. Right? The problem now is we are ideologically not coalesced around something yet. Right? So it becomes a bit of a patchwork and a bit of like a EEI.
I feel like we are ideologically coalesced around people need to have skin in the game. Right? That's across the board for PAP. Education. You need to pay school fees, a little bit of them, but you must pay, right? And if you really cannot, then we find a solution for you. Same for healthcare. You must pay. It's your own money. We reimburse you. We can give you cheap healthcare. But the whole system, traditionally, over the past 10, 20 years, is you must have skin in the game, right? You must be responsible for yourself. SkillsFuture, we talked about it as well. You must be responsible for yourself, right? And the government will help you only if you really, really cannot be, right? We are the last resort, right? And I think that kind of disconnect is that as we get wealthier, as people need more help, the social nets start getting wider, that it feels like it applies to everybody, and that whole skin in the game concept doesn't work as well, right? Because you start having this patchwork of policies of, everybody needs to have buy-in for themselves, but I still want to help everybody. Then your policies just become a bit weird, right? And it's a bit of a mishmash and hodgepodge of ideas, right? That maybe it's time for everybody to stop patching holes, right? Take a step back,
move up the line.
Yeah, what do we really want?
Yes.
From our healthcare, right? And then we create a system again.
Those are fair pointers. Yeah, and we welcome more discussion. In the comment section, if you have anything you want to highlight, you let us know. So
I think there's another thing when I read PAP's manifesto about ramping up our healthcare system by increasing the number of beds, because our waiting time has gone too long, right? Even after COVID.
Even planning for a hospital, right?
Yeah.
Yes, correct. I think there's East GH coming up.
For me, I don't think that is very interesting. For me, it's like just opening new MRT station. You have to.
No, it is. Right? It is a topic that really needs to be discussed about, because if we increase the number of beds, do we have enough resources, enough nurses, enough doctors to actually maintain the entire ecosystem?
Yeah.
Because we are struggling. We are really struggling in terms of having enough manpower in our healthcare system.
Yeah, I mean, we have a nurse-turned podcaster.
Exactly.
Right? So
this
goes to show how horrible.
So that's another thing. Like,
that he wants to be a podcaster.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's podcaster turned nurse.
Yeah, podcaster turned nurse is different. It's not social mission.
Aside from being, overworked, I think a lot of nurses generally will say that they are overworked. It's about uplifting the entire professional because the profession. Sorry, because right now today, although the stat says differently, diploma fresh grad from nursing school will only start to earn about 2.6K. When I'm not putting down McDonald's workers. I was previously working at McDonald's. McDonald's crew staff to start off O levels only 2.2 to 2.3K.
So a skilled profession should be far above.
Correct, right?
So.
To me, this is another thing that yes, we can keep on talking about increased number of beds, increased number of hospital, but do we really have the entire ecosystem that can be supported?
And the answer is no.
Exactly.
Right. That's why we are bringing more nurses.
And that is also another problem, because previously I was in a hospital that was building up at that point of time. They were having difficulties going to other countries and other cities within the country trying to recruit. Previously that wasn't much of an issue, but now it's an issue. Nobody wants to actually be coming here to work in this profession. One of the reasons is because the cost of living and the salary just don't make sense for them.
The premium is no longer there.
Yes.
The arbitrage is no longer there.
So to me, this is something that's supposed to be discussed about. I think no other manifestos talk about this. But it is something that really needs to be discussed about.
I like that discussion. No, but I don't have enough to go there, but let me think about it. Maybe we can have another discussion around this, right, in due course. Okay, fair. Any other things that caught your eyes that you think were interesting?
So many.
Okay, so maybe I add two, right? So one is the poverty line, right? So I think the WP has suggested to put in an official poverty line, right? So to me, these things are not direct, like you don't feel it directly, but once the lines are drawn, all the policies shift alongside different lines, right? So to put in a line like this, I think it will move certain social structures and certain social makeup based on the policy adjustments, right? So it is an interesting thing. And I think the other one that was quite interesting in the WP manifesto is to try to create new markers of success, right? Because now we always report GDP, and then a lot of these markers of success, we didn't even create it for ourselves, right? It's like some international body somewhere created this, and then we use it to evaluate. So we always get trapped within these markers, right? I do agree that I think it is time to expand our success metrics, especially if everybody, which all the party agree, we want to move down a more varied measurement of success. So, from that point of view, I think it is correct to have more indicators, and it calls for national conversation of what should be within these indicators.
And if you want to take a step further, we tie compensation to those indicators.
Yeah.
No, I mean, what gets measured gets
absolutely
exactly what gets measured gets done. Yes.
So I think that's the reality. If we are serious about onward Singapore, forward Singapore, whatever we call it now, and saying that we have a new social compact, we have new ideas, we want a different way of life. Fine, put your money where the mouth is.
Yeah.
Right? What are the outcomes you want to drive? How do we track those outcomes? And sure,
I can't remember which party. I think one of them did mention tying all this KPI to the government.
Yeah.
Because
I think it's also
they are
WP.
responsible for it. And I think that GDP is a problem, right? Because every time you tell, well, not every time, a lot of times you tell politicians, it's very kankor, struggling, very difficult. Life is tough.
okay, what?
GDP is great. Look at the amount of growth we have. Last years are fantastic. And that to me feels a bit like gaslighting, right? I'm telling you I'm struggling. You cannot empathize. You tell me things are good. Like, dude.
Our per capita so much. Why are you complaining?
Okay, thanks for bringing it up. Because sometimes I really feel like
we cannot end.
Yeah, I really feel like I'm being gaslighted, because like the live experience on the ground is one thing, and I read certain papers at a different level. We track the MOM reports very tightly, right? So we know the reality is not what is being said. But every time when we bring those things up, right, then it's like, GDP, not bad, what, right? Or we bring in how many foreign direct investments.
We got the data. Our data says it's good.
Yeah.
Then can you show me the data so we can break it out a bit? No.
Yeah. To be fair, right, across the different ministries, they all track different KPIs. Right, so maybe it is time. And sometimes this ministry say something, then the other ministry say, actually, it's fine. You also cannot blame them, because they are all just tracking different things. So maybe we do need a universal set of KPIs that is managed under the Prime Minister's office, lah. So the guy can say, okay, these are all that it is, right?
Like these are the key things we want to track. Each of your ministries have things that lead towards the outcome.
Exactly. So then we rework what is considered
and
success.
we don't center everything around GDP.
Then after that, everything will kind of move along. I mean, this is how the corporate works, right? And I think our machinery is quite corporate, right? Yeah. So it's like, if we adjust the KPIs, adjust the lines, everything will move along. And that is also why when Yo Yen and Kok Ho came out with the minimum income standards, 3 ministries came out to do a press conference against them, because they are essentially trying to rewrite the line, right, and redefine what is good quality of life in Singapore. So I encourage all parties to move beyond keywords and taglines, and start really looking at this, and we welcome quality discussions. Any last things? If not, we overrun. Like Anthony said, we'll never stop. Tomorrow we can do more. We'll do more tomorrow. Yes. So any last things? If not, we'll end it.
I think if I bring up one more thing, it will be we will definitely drag.
I'll let you bring up in 3 minutes, because you may not come back again. The rest of us will come back again. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things Workers' Party actually mentioned about the minimum wage of 1,600. I think there's another party that mentions
PSP.
about 2,250, right?
Yeah.
So what are your guys' thoughts on this? Because first of all, like I mentioned just now, previously I was a healthcare professional, and starting salary was 2.6k. If this is pretty much the standard, that means it can push up. That's number one. And secondly, it's like just now you're mentioning about like certain things we need to really monitor, right? And if certain markers are being monitored, that means things will get done, right? So first of all, if WP is mentioning about 1,600, how bad is it, like, in terms of people who are not really earning this much? Like, what are people generally earning nowadays if we talk about those lowest income?
Okay, so here's the part that I'm not very sure, right? So because TFC we always do with working professionals, right? So when we study a lot of the data sets, I confess that I will conveniently miss out the lower quintile, lower percentile, but I do hear that it is very difficult on the ground, but I am not in a great position to talk about it. I did chocho this one professor that I love, but I'm not sure they want to come, not right. So it's like, come lah. I was like, no lah, I don't comment. So I was like, okay, come, please come. Yeah. But I think to expound on the discussion a bit more, it is more about how do they come to this number.
Yes, correct. So
Right.
why I was mentioning about what Anthony mentioned is because, like, WP is the opposition that's actually in Parliament in the previous term, right? So that means they already, or they have seen some data to be coming up with this number of 1,600. So to me, that is really interesting because, like, 1,600, it must be really bad down there.
So you're saying the reality is people are earning
Yes, definitely.
much lesser.
I'm sure.
I'm sure a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are earning worse. I would like continue this discussion another time. Maybe you can come back again. Or we arrange again. Yeah. So that's all for today. We overrun. And thank you for staying all the way through with us. It's our first day doing this live stream. And any comments, put in the comment section. Let us know what you want us to focus on. So the next few days we can keep iterating on the different podcasts, and then we can go from there. Okay. I think this particular one we will convert it into a podcast so that you can listen. I think it's a great place to start the discussion. That's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
For your first day with me. You have many more days.
Many more days to go.
Thank you for signing up to
We
this.
look forward to seeing your comments.
Yes. Meanwhile, that's it. We'll take care. See you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.